All right, hour 3 of the program. We have covered the election campaign quite a bit. We're going to shift gears a bit, but do keep it locked here to CJ 800 as we cover day 1 of this 40-day federal election campaign. For now, let's move on. It's still a little bit political here, but we're going to get moving towards the economy. Joining me in studio is Ashkan Karbasfrooshan, founder of Watchmojo, one of YouTube's biggest channels, and built right here in Montreal. Ash, good morning.
Good morning to you.
So you guys at Watchmojo and the team there have actually, I think a lot of people know your channel for short videos and, top 10 lists and this kind of stuff. But I think there's room for expansion and doing other things. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're here. You've got a new documentary that's out. It's called Fox in the Henhouse: How Capitalism Can Redeem Itself. And it explores a couple of things. One, how we're seeing this there's a billionaire class in the U.S. that is sort of ringing alarm bells that there's something wrong with capitalism. And then you've got, this sort of millennial youth group that is also looking towards socialism in the U.S. in ways that we haven't seen in the past. So why don't you tell me about your new documentary?
Sure. So I think there's a saying that goes something like this: if you want things to stay the same, things will have to change. So a lot of these billionaires who are poster children for capitalism are coming out and saying, hey, this isn't really working. The rich are getting richer. And, the working class is kind of being forgotten. And, we've seen what happens in places like Russia and France, and we don't want that to happen here. Mm-hmm. So ironically, it's actually very much the haves that are actually raising a flag and saying there's a problem.
What do you think about that, too? That you got these guys that are literally worth $100 billion. Oh, now I figured it out. No, maybe we should stop that wealth after they've collected their $100 billion.
I think there is a sense of hypocrisy, and it's easy to roll your eyes. I think amongst them, there are some who may be a bit more sincere than others. Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, is worth $17 billion. He comes across a little bit more sincere than Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO billionaire of, J.P. Morgan. But I think they both realize that the writing's on the wall. There is this growing discontent, especially among younger voters. And whereas they are not exactly running for office, the politicians who are kind of using these billionaires as scapegoats, right? I think there's also an element of semantics when we talk capitalism, socialism, communism. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about? Some people are quick to say, well, Venezuela is socialist, it doesn't work. Well, I'm not sure Venezuela is really socialism. Mm-hmm. And, Norway and Sweden that everybody points to. And you know what? Canada, there are parts of socialism or socially minded economic policy, but at the end of the day, there are free markets, and that's generally the fundamental baseline of what capitalism is. So I think there is an element of sincerity. And one of the things that in the documentary we look at is historically you looked at education, you looked at home ownership, you looked at stock market investment. Those are things that are not even available to everybody, and in fact diverge the haves from the have-nots. And as an entrepreneur, obviously, I'm a big believer that entrepreneurship does help bridge the gap, and it's probably the best way if you could make that possible for people who want to start their own businesses to dramatically change somebody's well-being in a shorter time span within a generation.
Speaking with Ashkan Karbasfrooshan, founder of Watchmojo, they got a documentary out now called Fox in the Henhouse: How Capitalism Can Redeem Itself. To your sort of default audience on Watchmojo, younger people, clearly, if we look at this kind of issue, younger people in the U.S., younger people in Canada have a decidedly different outlook on that question between socialism and capitalism as a generation prior. Why did that make it so interesting for you to look at?
This may be the first generation where the younger crew will not do as well economically as the previous generation, their parents, right? So that, I think, is a little bit of a jolt to the system. Today, 9/11, on today, 18 years ago, a lot changed going forward, where the U.S. was pulled into these wars, spending trillions, deficits, and then, a kind of trickle-down effect where you also saw student debt and just like the opportunities for the younger generation change. And even though that younger generation now, like I'm 41, I had started my career. If you fast forward to today and you're in school, you're told at the same time you need to go and get an education to advance yourself, but oftentimes you're just putting yourself in debt for one. And you're seeing, we've talked previously, the technology that disrupts everything, where the value of education itself is being questioned. So for you, if you are, whether you're 18 or 38 even, you're kind of asking yourself, wait, things have changed, and maybe the system needs to change for me to benefit.
Listen, you make your bread and butter is YouTube, right? That's where you have your subscribers. That's where you make your money. How much do you think the sort of YouTube algorithm world we live in is causing these extremes where people are looking for these new systems?
Well, it's funny. Our next documentary is called Paradox, and it looks at, how things have changed. These platforms launched to be free platforms where anybody could say what they want, and now these owners have to kind of control more or less what goes onto it. And from an entrepreneurship lens, you look at, venture-backed entrepreneurs who are at the mercy of their investors, where YouTube ushered all these kind of reluctant, unlikely entrepreneurs who actually are more in control of their destiny. But to your point, absolutely. Technology is a tool, the same way that capitalism is an ideology and an environment. It's what you do with it, what you do within that sandbox. So, I don't think you can blame technology and these platforms for the situation we are in. I think it boils down to human beings and what you do within a framework.
Do you think at the end of the line, at the end of the day, we're going to end up in this sort of ethical capitalism place?
I think we already are a bit more. I'm 41, and I think I've always been a so-called ethical capitalist, and people could roll their eyes. But I think you're seeing that now with the challenges of WeWork and Uber and Peloton, where a lot of investors and a lot of analysts are coming out and saying, hey, chasing growth for growth's sake, probably not healthy. You have to look at sustainable growth, and to have sustainable growth, you have to be a bit more ethical than what historically entrepreneurs and executives have been forced to do.
The documentary, which is available on YouTube now, called Fox in the Henhouse, How Capitalism Can Redeem Itself. And Ashkan Karbasfrooshan from Watchmojo behind that documentary. You'll hear his voice throughout it. On a normal day, we could talk to you for half an hour. On an election day, on an election call day, it's a little bit different. So
I just consider it success that I wasn't bumped off for that announcement. So all good. We're good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ash.